Ubuntu wants you to test, and the community shall at least test each other's nerves, and Firefox says no to tracking. Join us at 11 to find out if they made it home.
Linux Mint Debian Edition 3 has been released, and a 32-bit version is still available. And Purism makes progress on the Librem 5 Linux phone, and it becomes a little more chatty.
ARM-powered Pinebooks, they're on the way. Are they ready? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. More on that in a minute. And it's been 10 years since Firefox saw real competition. We're going to talk about that. And we're not going to be talking about Internet Explorer because I said competition. Yeah. It's another great day for Linux, everyone. Let's get into it. The Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays, where we sit back, relax, take that midweek break, talk about things going on in the world of penguins, open source, or basically anything that we found interesting. I'm Vince Stone, that's Jill Bryant, and that is Pedro Mateus.
Hello.
Using his super announcer voice because I gave him a little bit of static for it right before it, and he just cut it up to 11. He made my dreams come true. Hey, what's everyone been up to, Jill? You've been a busy bee.
Yes, I have actually. The Linux Chicks LA are starting to plan our events for next year, including Scale, the Southern California Linux Expo 17X in March, which actually half of our LGC hosts will be at. Yay! Jordan and Empty and me and Matthew. And we're also planning to go to the Open Source Summit in San Diego in August, next August. So
see, I was a little bit confused when you said like half. I was like, which half? Like torso above?
Yay!
What's going on, Pedro?
Well, over here, I'm sure y'all didn't hear about it at all. I finished the Steambox 360. I posted it up on PC Part Picker. Got a bunch of upvotes, and now as I took the pictures, I started to notice, oh, there's a couple of bits of paint missing, and some things aren't lining up properly. So I'm going to have to go back and fix some of that. But the benchmarks are coming too, so I've already ran quite a few, and the rest are inbound.
Not a whole lot going on here, unless you want to count like the past 2 days. I think 13 hours is what it totally clocked. Jill nailed it. We were talking before we went live. I've moved the entire studio upstairs from the basement to, I guess, the first level, whatever you want to call it. So everything's like put together, and got to do the lighting and all that. It was kind of fun. Like, well, why did you do it? I think Pedro asked, and she was like, because of winter? And I was like, yes. So that. But soundproofing, that was a job. I moved a lot of stuff, and we got everything wired back up. But after moving plate glass desk, that was fun. I'm sore in new and fascinating places that I'm not entirely sure that actually exist, or if it's just my body. Like, you're just gonna hurt. Hashtag old man Vin. So let's get right into this with everyone's favorite super happy, not slimy video card company, NVIDIA.
Yes, specifically NVIDIA cards on Ubuntu, because there was a bit of a post in the Ubuntu Discourse website where they ask people if they would like to help them test the NVIDIA driver installation with 1804, 1810, be it on a desktop PC, on a laptop, anything that can run an NVIDIA card, and you can afford the time and the hard drive SSD space to help them test. They are very, very happy to have that help. They say that you should test on a default installation, like a fresh install. The instructions are there. They're pretty easy. Once you have the results, you post them on the Xor QA, and yeah, it's valid. They also say, this was interesting, they also say that it's valid for all of the official flavors. So if you're running Subuntu or Kubuntu or Lubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, whatever the case may be, you can contribute the results as well. Just be sure to contribute it to the right place. That's it.
Oh yeah, this is great because it's actually letting us test both the proprietary NVIDIA drivers and the open source drivers, which could lead to huge improvements for both. And goodness knows we need that, especially with the open source drivers under NVIDIA. They're extremely lacking behind the AMD Mesa open source drivers. So this is really a good thing, and it will also help improve the bugs with the NVIDIA proprietary drivers under Ubuntu. So this is really good.
I think one of the funniest things I read in this was, like, if they choose to use the proprietary drivers, like, really, we're talking about NVIDIA. There's not much of a choice.
Yes.
Well, let me rephrase that. I mean, there is a choice, but I mean, if you're using, 7 series, 9 series, pretty much if you're going to be doing anything other than desktop stuff, yeah, that's definitely a thing.
The 5 series and the 6 series you could probably get away with. For me, early Keplers, maybe. Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
But this does involve fresh installations for Ubuntu, so you're going to need a spare partition or a spare box laying around. If you want to help out with that, do it. I mean, it's always good. I've never had a problem with installing NVIDIA. Is with Debian or Ubuntu, isn't everyone's first step to set up the PPA?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me rephrase that. If it's your first time on Ubuntu, your first step's like, especially coming from Fedora, you're like, all right, TTI, drop out NVIDIA, start out running chmod. It's like, wow, that hosed the system. Okay, step 2. It's
you might get lucky and it'll work.
Sometimes it works. Then you feel special, but then you're filled with false confidence that you can repeat this, and you can. Cindy. What's up?
Yeah, this is awesome. Linux Mint Debian Edition LMDE version 3 has just been released, and it is based on Debian 9 Stretch with the Cinnamon desktop. And this is actually the first major release since April of 2015. And this is much needed. And it features the Linux kernel 4.9, a more polished software center, and all software has been updated, of course, to modern standards, which is awesome. And it is Debian-based. And since it is Debian-based, there are both 32-bit and 64-bit versions available, which is wonderful for those of us who still have 32-bit hardware and run vintage computers. And this is really wonderful also because so many other distros have abandoned their 32-bit releases, and Linux Mint is going to continue developing a 32-bit. And it is Cinnamon on Linux Mint Debian Edition actually runs really smooth, even on older hardware. In fact, I just did a new install of it on one of my old laptops with only 1 gig of RAM, and it ran really nice. It actually, I think, runs better than the 64-bit version, Cinnamon.
This is something I was really surprised to see, simply because it's like, good on you, Mint. Everyone behind that project, because they're basically testing like nuclear option, a legitimate plan B in case Canonical just does something that everyone's like, all right, last straw, and we're not going to mess around with that anymore. And Jill, did you just call 32-bit CPUs vintage?
Yeah, yes. Well, yeah.
All right.
It is 2018 after all.
I guess.
Yes.
Okay, fine. It's weird times because, N64 classic console. And it's like, no, that does not compute in my brain.
Yes.
Good on them. Interesting project. That might be something I just want to play around with and be like, let's see how this works. But if I'm going to go that far, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'd probably just use Debian.
Yeah.
I mean, Linux Mint running on top of Debian lets you, or saves you a little bit post-install, getting everything that you will need in order to use it to an acceptable state. So it has a place.
Yeah, it does. Actually, there's a lot of enhancements to it. Like it has the time shift function where you can you make snapshots of the distro, and that's something that's a little bit more complex on Debian core. So that's really cool.
Good to know. KDE Plasma on ARM Pinebook. It's a thing, and we're going to talk about it for a hot second. What is it? It's powered by a quad-core 64-bit ARM CPU, clocked at 1.2 gigahertz. There's my scroll. All right. 2 gigajoules of RAM, 16 gigabyte eMMC storage, which is like, oh, really? We had to do that. 14-inch TN LCD panel, 1366, 768. Kind of neat, Pedro. I don't know. This
It's a $100 laptop. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
$100 ARM laptop. Look, maybe it's peer pressure. Maybe it's all the community out clamoring. It's like, yes, we want ARM-based laptops. And I know Jordan has been wanting an ARM-based laptop for a while. And I can sort of see the appeal because, look, it's a thing that you can use to do very light... Okay?
I want an ARM-based laptop. This is not an ARM-based laptop.
Yeah. This is not RISC-V.
This is a Tinker Toy in laptop format.
Yes, but it's a good proof of concept. And if you want to try your hand at actually maybe buying one of the more expensive ARM laptops, starting with a $100 one and seeing how does this run is a good idea. Although I'm not entirely sure I would run Plasma on it. It's like you can do a lot of things with ARM laptops. Run KDE, it can't even run properly on x86 64, let alone ARM.
Well, that's definitely one of the things. I was looking at this. Yeah, it's neat. I don't know if it's necessarily useful because I read the specs. I was like, I have 5-year-old budget tablets with better specs than this.
Yeah.
And better screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I do say ARM laptops, so we're definitely waiting on Demos and Hercules chips to roll out. Then ARM on desktop, well, at least on mobile, becomes wicked interesting. And I think we're going to start seeing that next year. Because with something like this, I know somebody's like, but Ven, it'll last 3 years in standby mode, which is great, but it's also got to be useful, you know? It's kind of one of those things. Mm-hmm. So I say good on them. You said it was 100 quid, right?
Yep. It starts at 100 quid. You can get the version with 32 gigs of storage, also eMMC. And a couple other differences that goes up, but I think the most expensive version is $200. So yeah, they're cheap. They're really cheap.
Well, it's got that going for it. Jill, do you want one? I don't know if I want one.
I actually do. I want one to play with and from my collection. It's a toy.
It's
a toy.
Collection.
Yeah, and it will go with all my old vintage EPCs, netbooks.
There we go.
But yeah, actually, I think since KDE Plasma on mobile runs beautifully. And they said they did enhance it for this laptop, the Pinebook. So maybe it actually might run halfway decent. We never know.
As someone currently using the KDE desktop and having to, I can't be running compositing while we're doing the show. Otherwise, things will go weird.
Yes.
KDE is broken.
KDE, you got to watch it when you're doing complex things like running a browser. Right. Speaking of browsers, 6 ways Google Chrome changed the way we web. We're talking about this because it's the 10-year anniversary of Chrome. Yeah, Chrome's 10 years old, officially in the double digits. Soon it'll be getting wispy chin hairs and yelling at clouds uncontrollably, doing a very good Vin impression. But this article, who wrote this? This is Gizmodo. All this business is going to be in our show notes. They kind of run down a couple of things. We got the Omnibox, things that Chrome kind of brought to the table. Incognito mode, the raw speed, process per tab. That was great. It made the web less annoying. It's questionable. First browser to become an OS. Jill's going to talk about that in a second. But definitely, when I was reading into this, I was like, okay, Omnibox, that was a nice improvement. It took a little bit of getting used to, because I think everyone was used to using Firefox and, your search bar over to the right, but now everything's combined. It's easier for Google to steal all your data bits, right? Hashtag tinfoil hat. They're stealing your data bits. Incognito was an FSM send. I mean, it just, to anyone doing web development, that ability to double check stuff and bypass caching, that was great. And speed. Let's talk about speed. Back in the dark ages, 10 years ago, speed was a big issue. Firefox, let's face it, it had become a very sluggish, bloated mess by the time Chrome was released. I don't think anyone's going to argue that, even like diehard Mozilla faithful. And we're talking about single-core CPUs. I mean, that was the standards. Like some Core 2. I don't even think it was Core 2 Duo. It was dual core. I got like an X2 AMD Athlon too laying around. But I mean, it was difficult in Firefox to scroll through web pages like FacePage or MySpace. It was chuggy, like almost unusable on the single core processors. And the each tab as a process approach, that was ahead of its time. That was awesome. And I'm really glad everyone's adopted that, because let's face it, a lot of the web pages that we're running are basically just small applications.
Yep. And if it does crash, and well, I've had already 3 of those today, the rest of the browser is fine. The rest of the browser is still working. It's just that particular tab that's gone away. So that's good.
Yeah, and like Ven was saying, the article says it's the first browser to become an OS. Well, it's the first browser to popularize that and become an OS. There in the past, we had Linux web kiosk distros like Web Converger, which running Firefox, which was inspiration for Chrome OS. So it isn't the first, but it's the one that has popularized it, and it has become huge in education and the top-selling laptop on Amazon. It's really, really amazing. All their security features.
Speaking of Mozilla, I guess we can just go on ahead to the very next story, which is Mozilla, and they're changing some things. Well, they're changing their approach to anti-tracking. It's not that they're all of a sudden they're pro-tracking. No. They're not protracting either.
Pedro, if they were going to make that announcement, it would be in mice type at the bottom of a nightly update. Like, by the way, we're tracking you.
Yeah. But no, they're actually going full on anti-tracking everything. And they're going to make sure that the browser is enforcing the no tracking policy. It's already an option in current builds of Firefox and quite a few other browsers, but now they're going to make that enabled by default, and they're going to enforce it. They're going to especially target the mitigation of harmful practices when it comes to bad cookies. Happens a lot. Websites that will attempt to hijack cookies so that when you get back to the website that originally created that cookie, it will steal whatever you do while you're there. So you can't have that. And Mozilla, they're doing it. It will be available soon in the nightly builds, but you can enable it right now. If you download the nightly build, they have a little, at the bottom of the article, they have a little tutorial as to how you can enable it. And yeah, please test it, because this is something that needs to make it to, the next version of Firefox.
Yeah, definitely. This is another forward-thinking security feature in Firefox. First, back in 2004, Firefox allowed you to block ads, then added password protection, and now cross-site tracking. This is really wonderful, and it's showing that Firefox, they're keeping that commitment to security, and this will also make pages load more than 50% faster, which is always good. And I had a little thought about this. A lot of companies, including Google, make money off ads and tracking. Do we have them to blame for the state of toxic cookies on the internet in the first place?
No. That exists. Listen, they're not helping anything. I'm not going to cut Goobs any slacks on that.
I know.
I think one of the biggest things with this was just increasing speed, because, doing these lookups and that blocking, that can really hang up just loading a web page 100%. And Pedro, you pointed out that it's going to be enabled in Firefox Nightly, where you can go test that, and it will become default in Firefox 63. This is good work. This is good work for the average person, just beyond by default.
Yeah.
If, again, for nothing more than just accelerated web browsing, that's something I definitely noticed on mobile, because getting rid of ads, I buy all my apps. I'm not worried about that. It's like, you're stealing money from developers. No, I'm not. But when it comes to the occasional time that I'm going to be visiting a website, when you're dealing with limited resources, I know we've all done it. We've hit websites that just effectively brought whatever mobile browser you had to its knees. Like painfully so. And they're like, what about these weird workaround proxy plugins? No. That's when I discovered F-Droid and a program in F-Droid called Attaway, which all it does is it has a big honking host deny file. I was like, oh, so I don't have to worry about anything. It just, it's a nice little nuclear option to which is like, wait a minute, can I just add that to my router? Oh, look, I can just add that to my router. Now I don't have to worry about plugins or anything connected to my home device. I'm like, oh, and it's like, well, what if I'm out and about VPN into your home?
Yeah. And if you have one of those stock routers that your ISPs give you, uBlock Origin. Seriously, uBlock Origin has enough flexibility to block, be it the tracking cookies, any cookies whatsoever. It can specifically block certain websites. It does the ad blocking. It has like several different lists depending on what you fancy. Let's say you don't pay for YouTube Red and you want to keep those ads on YouTube so people actually get some money. There's one of the lists that they have offers just that. It's uBlock Origin is the way to go unless you really do have access to your host's file on your router, at which point, just do that.
Do you use any crazy plugins, Jill?
Yeah, actually, I have quite a few I used to use in Firefox, in fact. So this will be awesome that it's
when I see that, and I'm not picking on anyone, I'm picking on a lot of people, is that is my equivalent when I see that of, you remember, we've all done this. I'm sure anyone listening to the show, when you go to fix that family member's computer or that friend's computer and there's like 16 toolbars, when I see that with the plugins, I'm like, ooh, no, come on. You're collecting at this point. You're not using that many. Coming up next, Pedro, there's just not a lot of information on this, so dance monkey dance.
I tried to find it. I tried to find articles. I tried to find something. There just wasn't anything. So Gnome put out a tweet earlier in the week saying Mutter has a new release. What is Mutter? It's the display core for GNOME Shell. It's the compositor. It uses OpenGL to display and manage your desktop. Finally. It only took you, 19 years to figure out how to do GLX compositing? Finally.
Did I tune in just in time for Pedro hating on GNOME? That segment we do every week?
But it gets better because they finally figured out GLX compositing, but that tweet originally had a link that was dead. Linked to a dead page. Yes. Yeah. The Wiki GNOME.org project's Mutter page did not exist. And if you go down that thread, all the tweets are, there's no page. Well, so what exactly are you?
What you're trying to say is that link crashed as hard as KDE.
No, it didn't even exist to start with, so it's infinitely worse.
So at the end of the day, let's say this works and it's all beautiful and it's amazing and everyone falls in love with it. What is the advantage? Pedro?
Well, GLX compositing
it is faster.
It uses hardware acceleration, your GPU, to actually render everything that you're seeing on screen, which is great because putting stuff on screen is what the GPU is there for. So you really want to be using it to handle all of the compositing, like the layers, transparencies, if you're into that, what have yous. And it'll get rid of some of the tearing, not all of it, but there are ways around that too.
That sounded like a commercial for Compton. Jill, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh gosh. Well, my first thought, OpenGL, why don't they implement Vulkan with Mutter? That would be awesome. Make GNOME even faster.
Having GNOME actually perform would be interesting for a change, I guess.
Well, I don't know about with GTK, but I know some work has been done with Vulkan with Qt. So
yes, very true.
And having a Vulkan compositor is something that I've been screaming since Vulkan came out.
But just think about it. KDE, Vulkan, Qt, not only will it crash, it'll hard lock your box.
Repeatedly.
Yeah. Yes.
We're looking forward to the future. See, I'm trying to just balance out the KDE hate with the GNOME hate. Everyone at home, I use XFCE4. I have no fight in this game. I'm just instigating. Coming up next, something you might know is like, Red, that's been out forever. I was just reading on our Linux, and somebody was like, hey, man, T7 is out, which is Traction 7. It's completely free. You sign up. It's not shareware or anything like that. You can get it, and it's fully functional. And it's, in the line of DAWs. You think of like Ardor, Reaper, or anything along that. It's there. It's free. You might want to use it. It's slightly more user-friendly than Reaper, I would say. And maybe not quite as cool as Ardor. I like Ardor. Not only is it open source, but man, all right. Here, I'm just going to, let's pretend I'm not talking about Traction. I'll just gush over Ardor because that is the most brilliant interface. I went from not knowing anything really outside of just doing multi-track recording in Ardor to, it's like, whoa, okay, not only did this is a single developer too. It's like, me and this guy think alike. He knows how to set up software and the UX design based, and he's also a musician. And he's also dealt with the actual hardware, and that stuff is laid out logically, and it works like you would expect it to. However, I did test Traction. It's available as a deb. You can just extract it on anything and just run it directly from that. Open up Archiver. It did work. I tested it with a 4-channel input, the HD 404. No issues. Picked it up, 192K. That was the thing. I mean, more tools on Linux, and I love having stuff like that. And again, I know it's been available. Traction's been available for Linux since version 4 in 2013. So, yeah, more options. I think it's good. And quit saying there's no audio pro tools for Linux. It's like, there's a lot of them. You just got to learn to use them.
There's the complaint used to be, there isn't a good video editor on Linux. And now that KDE and Live is sort of established, people have changed their tunes. Like, there's no Photoshop on Linux. But GIMP is so hard. But Inkscape is such a mess to deal with. I could be using Adobe Illustrator.
Well, no, listen, here's the thing, man. It's like, there's a ton of pro video editors on Linux. I mean, you got Lightworks. More importantly, you got DaVinci Resolve, which does industry standard stuff. And you throw that, you're like, give me like 10 minutes and I'll come up with a new excuse. Listen, if you're saying you're not going to switch to Linux because of thing X, just don't waste other people's time with that, because you're going to replace thing X with thing Y. Just be like, hey, man, I'm Linux curious, and that you can come hang out with us. You don't need to lie to people, all right? Much less yourself. Purism, isn't that the open source phone or something like that, Jill?
Yeah. Purism is working on the release of the Librem 5 Linux phone. And they've developed a new piece of software for it called Chatty. And Chatty is a decentralized open source communication app being developed specifically for the Librem 5. And it was originally just going to be an SMS client, but the developers realized that, it would actually be easy and convenient to combine both instant messaging via open source XMMP and the Matrix protocol, as well as SMS in one application.
Yeah, they basically reinvented the Hangouts. The Hangouts that people actually used before Google killed the SMS feature. Yeah.
I don't know, man. That screen looked really pixelated when they were trying to send a message.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I had some issues there. But this is actually, it is really, really awesome, because it's being used with all open source tools, and it'll be unique for this phone. And I'm looking for it. I actually really want the Librem 5. So this is something that I'm actually gonna buy when it comes out.
Yeah, their idea of creating a phone that's fully free software foundation approved, both on the hardware and the software side, that is commendable.
Yes.
I would hate to be in their position, because everywhere they look, they're going to have to overcome some manner of non-trivial obstacle. But I really, really do hope they manage to pull it off, because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And not to rain on anyone's parade, but we do need to mention that if we're going to be talking about Purism and the phone, it's going to be delayed until April because reasons. That's just the thing, man. So, keep that in mind. I'm really excited about it, but I don't know. Good luck, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, they've done a really good job with their laptops and getting like free bootloader, free everything. Especially when they're working with Intel, which comes with its share of issues. Just not even Spectre or Meltdown, just the management engine, all of the proprietary stuff that Intel baked into their processors. These guys and gals, they have a lot on their plate right now.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that they actually might, I'm positive that they will succeed because they are working so hard to customize every single application for this device. Unlike just porting an OS over, to mobile and trying to work from there. This one is being worked on from the ground up.
Well, that is one of the things that has held back numerous projects is the ecosystem. So they got something running on that. I say good on them and best of luck to it. Pedro, let's read an ad.
How about we chill out ourselves instead of someone else?
How about even better? How about we thank the people that make this show possible, starting with, hey, we do want to thank one of our patrons, Romeo Sid Vicious. Oh, man, it sounds like a dangerous name.
You're awesome.
They increase their pledge. That's great. Get access to show notes. Send me a note if you want that. That's opt-in. We don't want to spam anyone. And a terribly mysterious stranger who does not want to be picked us up a new APC. If you're in our Discord, you can get that.
You know exactly.
Yeah, you know who it is.
We know who this is. Yes,
100%. And I totally respect that because I'm guilty of you don't make a big deal about it. But hey, thanks everyone for supporting this. If you want to kick in, do that. You can head over to LinuxGamecast.com, tap that support button. Come join the party. We have Amazon affiliate links. We got Newegg stuff. We got Humble. There's a new Humble Unity bundle. Pedro, Jill, you might want to go check it out. There's some good stuff in there, even at the $1 tier. Magic Internet Money's but the best way to help us set up a budget. Oh, actually threw some stuff on the wish list. I'm just grasping at stuff at this point. Is patreon.com/LinuxGamecast. This lets us set up a budget. We're getting ready to spend quite a bit of money to send a mixer to Canada land because we're trying to basically duplicate what we have here is like a fallback site in Toronto with what Jordan has in case, nuclear explosion in Athens for whatever reason. The show must go on. But as a patron, you do get access to things like our Discord. You get our uncut streams 3 days early. What else? What else, Pedro? I don't know.
You get the pre super shows in. You get you get to be a part of the making of the sausage, be it for this show and the
Jill,
Saturday
I just want to
show.
say good on that. Last Thursday they played lasers and feelings. And,
Yay!
I actually watched that one all the way through, so kudos to you and Jordan for that one.
Aw. Thank you.
It's because of all of these people, all of you out there listening to us and contributing teeny tiny little bit that we are able to do this and keep on doing this.
I think it's cool.
We'd
like to do more.
Love you.
I got some ideas for some new things. Ultimate end goal that we're working on. I think we're going to be testing out the 4-way to actually bring on, I think our test subject's named Strider or Macho Commando from Lutris this week on the Saturday show. Then we're going to start rolling that into Wednesdays once we can make sure that system's hammered out and down. I'm going to let Jill loose, be like, go get him. And so we'll have some fun people that you can join in and ask questions to. It's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. And I just realized I forgot to do a picture for Slice of Pie, so we're just going to have to go directly into that.
Oh, okay.
Hi. Yes. It's Pi phone. Yes. Everyone's been wanting to do this since the original Raspberry Pi came out. There were a couple of attempts, but this one's using a Raspberry Pi Zero, and it's absolutely minuscule. They say right now it's limited to 2G. 3G compatibility will be coming soon, so very much looking forward to that, because in 2018 being stuck on 2G, That's not a good place to be in. They call it a smartphone, which I guess, it runs the kernel for it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But with a 128 by 64 OLED screen, it's stretching the definition of smartphone.
Yes.
No, I actually have a functioning picture of it in use right now. This is one of the prototypes. True story. Remember when that was a thing, though, was the trend was just smaller and thinner.
Yes.
And
I remember the picture that explains why screens got bigger?
Yeah.
Oh, I can watch certain content on my phone now, and then the screens got bigger.
I'll tell you what, the screens got bigger because web browsers, man. We didn't use WEP or WAP. Or was WAP the standard for the mobile back in the day? I remember having to set up WAP pages or something like that. It was a nightmare. No, that's really cool. That's a tinker toy. However, unless that thing's even in a sleek little package that's got a TSA acceptance factor of only like 6, unpackaged, that's like a -3. Don't even bother with it.
No, that's not going anywhere. That's going immediately to the TSA log.
Indeed. 10% revamping the Raspberry Pi desktop.
Yeah, so this is an article talking about Simon Long, the software engineer responsible for the Raspberry Pi desktop. And he actually is saying that polishing the Linux desktop is the extra 10% that proprietary desktops don't allow you to do. He is really impressed with the customization ability of the Linux desktop. And he had originally, what was really interesting in the article is he had never worked on Linux before until he came to the Raspberry Pi. So this is really neat, someone coming from the outside looking in and realizing how amazing our Linux desktops are. And he has, of course, modified LXDE for the Raspberry Pi and has done a very beautiful job to make it user-friendly for those users coming over from Windows and Mac OS. So he's actually done a really good job with that. And to me, of course, this is the beauty of Linux. We can customize all the things.
One of the things he mentions is that when he was first invited into the Raspberry Pi team, Eben Upton asked him, he was showing the LXD desktops, like, okay, can you improve this? And he was like, yeah. But then he realizes, like, oh yeah, I don't know anything about Linux. I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh god. But kudos to him. He's managed to make LXD not look as bare bones as it does everywhere else. It even has some functionality which managed to irk quite a few and ruffle a few feathers in the Linux community, according to what he says, because I genuinely thought that people were done complaining with added functionality, and people only complain now when, they removed functionality, like the ability to double-click a shell script and run it directly from the file manager, GNOME.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen. I don't hate on GNOME unnecessarily, but seriously, GNOME, it takes 3 clicks to log out of a GNOME session.
Yeah.
It's like, are you sure? I mean,
usually when I'm under GNOME, I just go to the terminal and type halt.
Outside of that, I don't have a problem with
shut down or power off.
That is legitimate complaint. This is good, and I genuinely pity the fool that has to use Raspberry Pi with an actual desktop, though. And I don't say that with any malice whatsoever. That's like, because we've all done it, and it's like, it's not pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you have a Raspberry Pi and you're playing around with it to the point where you start to notice that the user experience in the desktop isn't great, you're probably doing it wrong.
But you got to look at the positive side. This is going to add that functionality for the situations where you're stuck having to use it as a desktop. So it'll be slightly less excruciating.
Yeah. And they've done a really good job at enhancing LXDE for the low-powered Ras Pi. It does run really zippy. It actually, the Raspberry Pi version actually runs better than the desktop version for Ubuntu. So That's awesome.
All right. Before we get out of here, if you want to get a hold to us, we have a contact button. Now, I know for a fact it works because for the Saturday show, we got a lot of new people joining in. They're like, wait a minute. This is like, what, Pedro, wave 4 or 5 in the second or third age of Linux gaming?
Yep.
When something happens and everybody's like, oh, Linux gaming, let's... So I know this button's working, but if they want to tap it, what do they do after that?
Well, before that, you need to make sure that your message is at least sort of in English. We're not even that picky. Sometimes we'll just run it through Google Translate. So as long as it's Google translatable.
This is coming from somebody who genuinely spent 73 seconds trying to figure out what was it, a nut was?
Yeah, because I forget words.
Washer. Aww.
I have name aphasia and I just forget what things are called. So yeah, no, you can easily get in touch with us. There's a multitude of ways. The contact form is the most likely way that we will feature your thing right here, right now. You can try the YouTube.
It's one of the two guaranteed ways that we know we're going to read it. You do it through the contact or you do it through Patreon. If you want to leave a post on Patreon, you can also leave a post directly at linuxgamecast.com if you want to do that. Good chance we're going to see it. 100% you can leave comments on YouTube. It might get missed. It's not that we ignore them. It's that we all have administrator accounts to YouTube, and that little notification, once one person checks it, it doesn't matter. As long as it's on that account, it doesn't show up for everyone else. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. So let's get right into it. What do we have this week?
This week, we have a teeny tiny bit of feedback, which comes from Meaty Snez. I'm going to go with that pronunciation. And they say, year of the desktop. With Steam making Windows gaming possible for Linux and all of the coverage that entails, will 2018-19 finally be the year of the Linux desktop? Ha ha ha. Capital P. Will it be enough for Microbot and Adobe to make their application, singular, work on Linux? What will it take? Well, here's the thing.
First off, it's going to take the elusive Adobe Microbot application.
Yes. Yeah. But here's a thought. If Valve can convince Adobe to release their software through Steam, all of a sudden, all of those applications are running with Proton.
Nope, it's not going to happen. Adobe Creative Cloud.
I know it's not going to happen.
I mean, it's going to be web-based. I mean, that's what they're moving towards. And I don't know. Everyone, we kind of mentioned that during the show. It's like people replacing projects with like, once this runs, guys, then I'm gonna go to Linux full time. And they're getting a little desperate, especially on the gaming side. Now that Valve just like dropped out, it was like, you can play most of your Windows titles to varying degrees. But now it's like, Adobe, got to have Adobe. I'm like, dude, you're 14 years old. You've never used Adobe. Come on. Just
No. Oh, they have the pirated version.
A Flash? What are you talking about, man?
No. They just go on the... They go down to the local video store, they rent themselves a digital copy, and they run it. A Flash.
Not the best and the brightest. Microsoft, and you can run Office and this is like, there are definitely parts inside Microsoft under Nadella that's like, hey, we got our own Linux distribution now.
Yes.
And
it's great software.
Right. Let's focus on getting our software running everywhere else. Hey, look, we released Visual Studio for Linux, kinda. It's a glorified text editor.
It's an Electron app.
It's a piece of nightmare fuel. That's what it is. But at least they're making an effort. But no one who's been around for more than 30 seconds trusts Microsoft. Do I think man, we've been making that joke on Slashdot for over a decade. So the biggest issue Linux has is I make this joke all the time when I'm picking on developers, usually the ones that are my friends. Game developers. And I'm like, well, I don't have a Linux box to test on. I was like, oh man, you got to drive all the way down to the Linux store and buy one of those. It's like, you're not buying a Next box. I mean, just get it thumb drive, stick it in, quick partition, and to test it. But until it's more standard, and we see stuff. We do have System 76, XPS shipping with Linux out of the box, but you got to be able to go to the big box store, the Fry's, the Best Buys. It's got to be there, and it's got to be ready for prime time. And we're still got a little ways to go. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, because the last time I went to a store and I saw like one of the big stores, Vorten in Portugal, and I saw a Linux laptop it was running Ubuntu 12.04, and that was one model out of hundreds running Windows. So yeah, no, we need that parity at least in the shops.
I remember just going for the entire purpose of doing this. There was a hot nanosecond where the Walmarts sold Windows PCs.
Oh, yeah.
I went there to see it with my own eye organs. I looked at it and I said, "This is wrong," and I left. Anyway.
Well, when EPCs came out, a lot of them had Linux on them, even the ones sold at Toys R Us.
Yeah,
and that penetrated the, penetrated.
Yeah, but that was running Xandros, and Xandros
is not that great. Yeah.
It was a thing, though. I mean, even stuff like that helped motivate Microsoft. Just like, let's see what we can get. You can get Windows 10 on a Pi. You talk about hating yourself.
Yeah.
But
well, I know, like in countries like Brazil, where in all the computer stores, the dominant OS is Linux on all the computers. So that's what most people are using. So that's what needs to change.
Oh, you hear those helicopters? That's the Microsoft sales force flying to Brazil. They're like, oh, we can cut you a deal. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I think we're going to bounce out of here. Take a look at your name in the credits, because that's one of the little things we like to thank you with, and it's pretty cool. Or just close your eyes. You're like, I can't believe I'm packing this train wreck. Little column A, little column B, we still love you. And let's light those up. How about that?
Yes. Yay, chat realm.
Fun show, guys. Fun show.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see if I can build that stupid Raspberry Pi Zero phone.
Thank you to all our executive producers and our producers and all you wonderful people.
They're not producers. Hey, man. One of the great things you can do, just like share the show, tell people, spread the distortion. Because we don't know how to market very well.
Shout about these crazy people who shout at you.
Oh, one line this week. It's brilliant.
Yay! Bye, everyone.